call to order the local planning agency meeting of March 12th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Chair Tompeck,
Here.
Vice Chair Fender,
Here.
Board Member Kurzman,
Yes.
Board Member Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, do you have any public comments?
No, sir.
All right, that brings us to approval of the agenda. Any changes or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Chair Fender,
Aye.
Board Member Kurzman,
Yes.
Board Member Mayfield,
Yes.
Chair Tompeck.
Yes. Next item is approval of minutes of July 18th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Board Member Kurzman,
Yes.
Board Member Mayfield,
Yes.
Chair Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fender.
Aye.
Okay, the only item we have on the agenda today is the ordinance number 458, amending land development regulations development review process. Would the town attorney please read the ordinance title into the record?
An ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sills Point, Florida, amending the land development regulations, chapters 30, 46, 54, 78, and 82, to remove conflicting language, update and streamline the development review process, provide for administrative approvals, remove references to preliminary plans, remove references to major and minor site plans, provide for severability, and providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances, codification, and effective date.
Thank you very much. Are there any public comments? I guess the answer is still no. Any discussion from the group?
Make a motion.
You know, I think when I was reading this, it didn't seem like these were major changes. And of course, you're running across different ordinances, it makes it a little difficult to read out of context. Does Bonnie and staff want to make a?
Yes, I'll let Bonnie kind of walk us through it quickly and.
Yeah, so basically how we came to this, as you remember last year, we did update the LDR to be consistent with your new comprehensive plan. And town manager had asked us to work directly with the staff to put together a standard operating procedures for development applications so that if they take one in, they know step by step what to do. So we're writing that up, and we realized when we were doing the SOP that the way the code was currently written, it would put an applicant before 3 public hearings. They're required to have a public hearing for plat approval, which is your final step. We know you want to see site plans, so that's going to go to you. But they also had in the code that all construction plans would be approved by the commission. And so I spoke with the manager, and both of us felt it's not really necessary to put applicant through 3 public hearings. The expert for reviewing a construction plan would be your building official. Neither me nor the town manager has the authority to really approve a construction plan. So we thought, let's just take that out, streamline it, so they just come to you for a site plan application and approval, and then the final plat approval, which is required by state law. And the other thing, while we were in there, we noticed that in some places it had specific numbers attached to fees. And what we felt is we just keep a fee schedule at the town hall and on the website, because as that changes, you'd have to update your LDR every single time, which is a public hearing. But just for your own information, if you ever do change your fee schedule, it'll still come to you. It still has to be, we have to do a fee study to make sure it's compared with other municipalities to make sure the fees that we're charging are in line. So you would still approve that, but when we update the fees, we'd only have to update that schedule that's kept in town hall. We don't have to go back to the LDR. So really, it's the only substantive change is that related to that process for approval of construction plans. The other changes are just basically to keep the terminology consistent throughout and to remove specific fee schedule information from the LDR. And so I'm available for any questions.
Vice Chair Fender.
So just real quick, in relation to site plan approval and development, we just went through a whole bunch of ordinance updates about a mitigation plan for trees.
Oh, right.
Is that covered in this?
We didn't touch anything about the trees. I think you updated the tree ordinance before we did the LDR for the comp plan, but nothing has changed related to your tree ordinance and tree protection.
Well, let me word it differently.
Okay.
I'm not worried about changing it. I'm worrying about the process with which we go through the approval of site plans. And then the creation of that site plan includes a mitigation plan on the trees that will be moved. And when they ultimately approve the site plan, it includes where new trees might exist if they are removing some that are there and we're protecting our canopy.
Correct.
And that
Correct.
site plan's approved by this body.
Yeah, you're going to
As a
see every
commission.
site plan. There it used to be a minor site plan and major site plan where if it was a certain tipping point, you wouldn't see it. Now you see all site plans.
Well, I'm not necessarily worried about me seeing it because I'll remember it. But
Yeah,
20 years from now, I won't be here and somebody, what we went through the ordinance, the exercise of the ordinance was to add the word mitigation into the site plan creation process and approval. So
Yep.
I just wonder, what I thought you were going to tell me is that, oh yeah, everything in the ordinance is by default adhered into whatever this is. And so if we have to add the word including vegetation mitigation plans, that's what I would.
okay, I'll look at that, but I'm fairly sure that as part of the site plan process, you have to have a landscape plan and a tree survey. Tree survey shows where all the current trees are. It tells what kind of trees they are. And on that survey, it'll say, we're going to keep this one and we're going to cut this one down.
Well, that's the way it used to be and it failed. So we went through all that and added the word mitigation
Okay.
to it to make sure that when they did what you just described, which is perfect, it's called out that if you are moving them, you are replacing them with something.
And that is true. They do have to come to the building department and show Jack which trees are staying, which ones are going away. And there are, if you take out trees, there's a mitigation for how many you have to replace. But,
That wasn't called out until the last 3 months, probably.
okay.
That's why I'm
'Cause
worried about these changes.
Yeah, it wouldn't affect that, but I will verify that mitigation process. But the mitigation is if someone were to cut down trees without a permit, they just come in and they just, because that did happen to a site.
Specifically heritage oaks and like really old trees that are really hard to replace.
That was tough, and they didn't get a permit, and that's how that happened. But they do have to, if someone comes in and does something without a permit, they do have to, I think, replace 4 to 1, whatever that ratio is, so that there's some sort of penalty, but,
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if this process that we're describing now also includes that process.
I will verify it before the second reading, but it shouldn't affect that mitigation.
See, I kind of assumed that the building official would be responsible to make sure that's part of the construction plans.
I would have thought that.
And the site plan.
Well, I think,
Yeah,
if I may, I think you're talking about developments.
new
That's
developments.
what we're dealing with here. What we're talking about, or the commission's talking about, is a regular building permit plan for a lot.
I
It's
understand, yeah.
already developed, it's already part of the plat. And so what we're dealing with here as a change is for new
Development.
development. So the Racy Ridge parcel, if they came in and developed that. There's another parcel that's of, good size to the south of us. If at some point in time they come in with a development plan, that's what this is involved.
But you're thinking
Am I
just.
correct?
Yeah, you're talking about, if it was just one lot, it would be a building permit, but that would still be seen by Jack, and he would approve it.
Well, it
But,
might be almost more imperative from what you're talking about, because in a new development area, that's where a heritage oak might exist.
Right.
That-
no, and they would have to do a tree survey,
That would
absolutely.
come before you, though,
Yep,
as a commission, because it's a development. That's all part of that approval process. The one, a lot is going to come before Jack, but he has the ordinance, and we have been enforcing that
I would just like to educate
Strictly.
the future commission on, make sure
Yeah.
you're not forgetting about your trees.
But I do think it's going to help that we're putting that standard operating procedure in place, because if and when staff changes, they'll have a go-to to learn the process. And I think it's going to be great for continuity of the staff as you go along.
Member Mayfield?
Yes. So section 3, it's actually page 10 of our agenda. Section 3, excuse me, chapter 46, administration, section 4631. It's titled Payment for In-House Costs and Professional Services Rendered by Town. So it doesn't specifically talk about just developments. And I just kind of saw this, I didn't see it earlier, but you're taking out all those specifics, because it talks about like a building permit rezoning, which I don't think of as a development, and it's replacing it all with any proposed development. Is this section of the code, was it originally for everything, saying that you had to pay filing fees? Because if we're taking out all that stuff and just calling it any proposed development.
All proposed development's going to have a fee, and the fee
But is
schedule,
the building permit a development?
it is proposed development because you're putting a house there. Yes, that's how. I think that we covered the definition of what development means in the definitions.
Okay.
If we didn't, we will put that in there, but I'm pretty sure it says what development is, and development is even a building permit. It is development.
Okay, so, and then, I guess maybe I'm discussing the definition of the word building permit. So even if you're doing an improvement, that's
It's
development.
development. So that covers building permits and then site plans where you're involved.
Right. Okay.
But Heather's taken notes, so we'll take care of those two questions before the next reading.
That's at 6 o'clock.
Oh, exactly.
Yes.
No, I'm at the second reading, the second meeting in March. But I probably have time to look
And
it up,
then
actually.
Since we had a little time. What you were talking about, and I talked to the town manager about this, the replacement of us seeing it 3 times versus seeing it 2 times, that we don't see the construction plans, which makes sense. I mean, that's not, so I'm not saying I don't approve of that or agree with that, but I've been here now almost 5 years, but I don't think I've ever seen construction plans. Maybe we haven't had a development. I know you haven't been here that long, but anybody else from you?
We haven't had a
Long
site
time?
plan. We haven't had a site plan.
Okay.
Well, when I say we haven't had it, we've had applications, but it hasn't gotten
Right.
through to the point where you're approving it.
We had before it was Racy Ridge, it was that other thing that we saw, the site.
The site plan, but then after you have the site plan, then
Right,
you have
and
your
it never went
construction.
anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay,
you
I was
haven't
slightly
got,
confused because I've never seen construction plans and it seemed odd. It makes sense that we wouldn't, but okay,
and it is odd that it's like that in your code, so we thought, let's just fix it while we're in there.
okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Now, I was wondering a little bit about the certificate of authorization to be issued by the town commission on work that affects historic resources. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? I'm not real familiar with that one.
Is that in,
30-5.
The first one.
okay, hold on a second, let me go back to that one.
I'm just trying to figure out where that comes, where it comes in the process.
In the conceptual, so there used to be a thing called preliminary plans, which was like before your formal plan. We're calling them now concept plans. That's really the only change we made. But if you were going to do development that would affect archaeological or historic assets, you'd have to have a preliminary plan first before you go to your formal plan. But, so they would have to, you'd have to know where those historic resources are.
So then whoever's doing the evaluation of the actual historic resource will issue some kind of a paper or report or
Something,
something, and then we
yes.
can make a judgment on that prior to approving the plan? Is that the
Correct,
idea?
correct.
Actually, I think we have one of those, but it has nothing to do with development at the moment.
Yeah, so there's a master site plan, a site file with the state of Florida, if it was on there, for example.
Okay. All right, do we have any other questions or motion to approve the first reading?
I'll make a motion.
If I may, I think because you're sitting as the LPA, so the motion should be to approve with, or approve to the commission this change, and then at the commission meeting, you'll vote for the first reading. Is that, what wording would you like?
What you're doing
Okay.
is the LPA is making a recommendation to the commission, so your vote would be to move it forward to the commission with a recommendation of approval.
Sorry to jump in.
That's okay.
It's fine.
Would you
Make
like
a-
to revise your motion, Dave?
I'd like to make a motion to get this approved by the commission.
I'll second it, but I have one more question.
I have another question.
Mr. Fender?
So, I hate to keep harping on this, I'm going back to trees again, and I'm sure you'll roll your
Imagine
eyes.
that.
Trees are important.
Yeah, but in parallel or construct to what I see as the 30-8 construction or exploration of archaeological site. I assume that's there because the state requires that we follow, a process to protect historical resources. And I wonder, in that same vein, if there shouldn't be a parallel paragraph about the tree concept, right? I mean, if they're going to build on a place where heritage oaks or not scrub grass, but I'm talking about trees over 2 decades old, some paragraph might exist to call out that this needs to be taken into account.
Yeah.
Like you said, they shouldn't be doing it anyway because that's part of the process, but they should also be doing archaeological sites as part of the process. So I'm wondering to give new developers the understanding that, okay, we really don't want you to clear cut our lots, and we would like to make sure that whatever you build that has a canopy to it, or protects the aging canopy that might be there, that there's a paragraph that just calls that out in some way.
Okay. And I do know, and back me up, Susan, that there are some limits but from the state. So you're aware of that. You'd have, I think the state says you'd have to have an arborist certify that the tree is dying before you could cut it down. Is that, I mean, I'm summarizing it.
It's even worse than that. I mean, they can pretty much cut everything down they want to.
So that it's one of those state preemptions, so I just would say it with that.
Until that gets changed.
Exactly.
Right, so yeah, there are limits on what can be required with respect to permitting of tree removal. And one of the things that's limited is putting mitigation requirements on that, but it only applies in certain cases.
Well, my position on it is as it was before. Even though there is a state ordinance saying that, I think it's up to them to fight us on it and say, no, we understand that we're coming into your town and we're going to follow what the state says, which is we can cut down all the trees we want in your neighborhood. And I'd rather them stand up at the podium and actually say that rather than, and fight us in court, and we'll lose. But, I think the message has to be clear that we would like to protect the trees if we can.
Okay, we could,
Obviously, that's threading a pretty nasty needle, right? I mean, I'm
yeah,
not sure how to accomplish what I just said.
I could
Yeah.
look at the law and just make sure that we're not overstepping. If we put,
I would suggest that maybe we can find a place in here to just list as a part of the requirement for the plan is compliance with the requirements of the tree protection ordinance,
in coordination with, and then reference the state law.
which.
Well, I'd rather not let reference to state law, because state law says cut down all the trees you want.
Well, presumably our ordinance now.
Is in compliance.
with
Okay, then we'll just reference the ordinance. So we could just add a little paragraph there just to put them on notice that
Just enumerate that as one of the things.
one of the things you have to,
If they were a good corporate citizen, I would think they would come to us with a plan that says, hey, they would get out in front of it and say, we want to build here, and by the way, we also understand you're a tree city, and here's the things that we want to do to make sure that we adhere to the spirit of your town.
Correct.
You know, they could come in and stand up and say, we're going to build here and we're going to cut every tree down we want, but
Would be very unpopular if they did that.
that's really what I'm saying.
If they came in and said that, that would be very unpopular.
We'd rather them come forward and
Right.
realize that we would like to hear them say that they're going to protect.
Right, but I'm sure a tree survey is a part of what you have to submit as part of a site plan.
Yeah, and we just might want to make that explicit in here.
Yeah, okay.
Or,
So-
you know, I'm just bringing it up, maybe not. I'm sort of.
Well, while we're in the code, I mean, if it's something that needs to be, we can do it between now and the second reading.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of the site plan is it demonstrates that your proposed development is going to be in compliance with
all of
whatever.
All ordinances in this, yeah.
applies to it.
Yep.
But to your point, we can look at where we could specifically reference.
Well, and the other thing we can do is part of what we're doing for the town is we're putting together a checklist. You have to have this, and this when you submit. So we'll make sure tree survey, which clearly marks trees that are going to stay and trees that are going to go.
Mitigation.
Yeah, and so put that on the checklist, because obviously if they don't bring it, their packet's incomplete, and it's not going to go any further until they bring in everything on that list. We'll also make sure it's in the code.
All right, I'm sorry, I think that's what did it.
Well, I think at least, and don't get me wrong here with the comment I'm about to make. You know, this is, I think, a little more general. I don't think we need to have the specifics about trees or construction or drainage or anything else. I mean, this hasn't modified anything that we've already decided on. So I don't necessarily think we need to add more to this, but that's just my opinion.
That was my question.
And if putting it on make sure it's on the checklist is good, and it's in the SOP, that's really up to y'all. Because Jack's not going to let it go through if it doesn't have everything on the list.
Yes, we're going to be doing it.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Okay, this is a random small question, page 13, under 78-21, the building and other structures. This is just probably more me asking about our code. The location of all adjacent off-site sidewalks. Why did you add adjacent? What, I don't know, I mean, I'm not even sure why that, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure it's not going to affect anything, but I was just like,
I want to, where are we at? 21?
Page 14.
Oh, 14, I was on 13.
I mean, I guess you wouldn't want to, I mean, the location of all off-site sidewalks sounds weird
No,
in general
it's,
because.
exactly, it needs to be adjacent to the project. So I think
Okay.
that was something that Mike picked up, that he thought it needed just to be tightened up.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that they have to put all,
Right, no, it's
just the
weird.
ones adjacent to their project.
It was weird that it was there, obviously, without it, just the location of all,
And the other change, that was just,
yeah. Oh,
that-
well, what is required by, what is required by section 3547?
we don't have a 3547, that was a typo. It doesn't exist, so we took it out.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was just a mistake.
Is that, obviously, that's something that we want to know, the location of all adjacent off-site sidewalks?
You do want that, yeah, you do want to know that, but it's not, and that's not the right code reference, so.
Okay. That's it?
Okay, I think we had a motion and we had a second. So, did you get the motion, April?
I did.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll.
Board Member Mayfield,
Yes.
Chair Tom Peck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fender,
I,
Board Member Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to staff comments. Mr. Daniels,
None, sir.
all right. Any other board comments?
No. Negative.
Okay, motion to adjourn the LPA meeting?
I'll make a motion.
We're adjourned.